All right. Well, welcome and thanks everyone for joining us for this WSFB Political Action Committee and Candidate Evaluation Committee informational video and training. So it's the hope that through this that you'll have a better understanding of the purpose and the structure of the Political Action Committee, as well as the Candidate Evaluation Committee. We really hope that this is going to be informative, and ultimately the hope is that it would encourage you to be a part of this important work. So to start us off, I want us to look at the purpose of the WFB Candidate Evaluation Committee, or as we call it, the CEC, and the WSFB Political Action Committee, or PAC. Okay, the purpose behind these committees are really threefold. So first, it would be to expand individual involvement and promote participation, the participation of Washington Farm Bureau members in that political process. Okay, we want Farm Bureau members to be involved in the political process, to engage with candidates and those seeking office, and to be able to review candidates and share those recommendations to the PAC for potential endorsement and support. Okay. Now, these committees also are working and are meant to educate political office holders and candidates for offices on the concerns and the issues that are affecting the agriculture community. We want these committees to be a tool to inform and educate candidates as to the values of agriculture and their concerns on the issues that are important to agriculture in our state. And then finally, we want the purpose is to support those qualified candidates who line up with the basic philosophy of Farm Bureau policy. We want to support candidates who align with the values and the mission and the priorities of Farm Bureau. And that's ultimately the purpose. We want to support individuals. We want to support the individuals that support agriculture, and regardless of their political party. The CECs and the PAC are nonpartisan entities, and their ultimate priority is to support candidates that support agriculture, period. Okay. So what is the structure of the CEC and the PAC? Well, first, the function and process of the county CEC is that the County Farm Bureau needs to first choose whether they want to participate in the PAC process, and they participate by forming a county CEC. And once that County Farm Bureau board decides that they want to participate, then the County Farm Bureau will look to recruit and build that CEC board. Okay, once the board has been created, or once that committee, I should say, has been created and populated with members on that CEC, the County Farm Bureau will then inform the PAC trustees that the county has developed a CEC and will be engaging in that particular year's election. Then from there, the CEC will make recommendations for endorsement to the PAC trustees. Now, this is an important distinction, and we're going to deal with it several times over this informative video. But the Candidate Evaluation Committee, the CEC, does not make candidate endorsements. Okay, that's an important distinction. It's the PAC that they are the entity that makes endorsements. The CEC will interview candidates, they'll make recommendations for endorsement, but they do not make endorsements. Just because a CEC recommends a particular candidate to the WSFB PAC, that does not mean that the candidate has been endorsed. That doesn't even necessarily mean that they will be endorsed. That simply means that the county has recommended their endorsement. It's the PAC Board of Trustees who have the responsibility of accepting the recommendations from the CEC and making endorsements of the candidates. The PAC's decision to endorse or not to endorse. So that takes us to the PAC's responsibilities. first and foremost, accepting and making endorsements of candidates. The PAC is also in charge of the finances. So it is their responsibility, the PAC's responsibility, the trustees of the PAC's responsibility to determine any expenditures or any contributions that the PAC wants to make to a particular candidate. The PAC supervises any and all fundraising activities. And finally, the PAC is responsible for reporting all PAC financial activities to the appropriate federal and/or state agencies, such as the PDC or the FEC, regarding all financial contributions that the PAC receives, as well as all the contributions that the PAC makes to any candidate or to other potential recommendations. So now let's focus on the primary duties of the Candidate Evaluation Committee. Let's focus in on that Candidate Evaluation Committee, the CEC. The primary duty, what does this committee do? Well, like I said, first, they review and evaluate candidates. That county CEC knows better the candidates in their particular county or region better than the majority of others throughout the state. You know your county better than anyone else in another county, generally speaking. Like I said, so they review the candidates for that particular area, and this might include getting to have conversations with candidates who are running for office. Might include having things like a questionnaire developed that the county CEC can send to each of the candidates in their area, and the candidates can answer the questionnaire and send it back. We're going to have some templates or show some examples of questionnaire questions that you might look at asking later on in this video. You can also look at holding something like a forum or a debate potentially. There's a variety of ways that you can review and evaluate candidates, and know that the Washington Farm Bureau State Office and the staff there have tools and templates and resources that they can certainly help in that review and the evaluation process. So know that you're not having to recreate any wheels here, and you have a team that wants to work with you on this. From there, the CEC will make candidate endorsement recommendations. Again, keyword there being recommendations to the PAC trustees, and the CEC can also make funding recommendations. If the CEC wants to recommend that the PAC use some of its funds to support a particular candidate's campaign, they can also make those recommendations to the PAC trustees. Again, the CEC is not in charge of the finances. The trustees are the ones who are responsible for funding, but the CEC can make those recommendations, and the PAC can consider those recommendations. And then finally, the CEC might collaborate with the fundraising process with permission from the trustees. Again, the PAC trustees oversee all fundraising activity. The county may be able to collaborate as long as they have permission. Okay, so that's the basic functions. Those are the basic functions of a CEC. Now, how do you form a CEC? How is it compiled? How is it made up? First, a CEC consists of at least 5 Farm Bureau members. You can have more than that, but it has to have at least 5 members, and each of those 5 members must be Farm Bureau members. All right. And at least one of those members needs to serve on the county Farm Bureau board, be a part of that particular county's Farm Bureau board of directors. Once the individuals have been assigned and decided on, then the CEC must be approved by the County Farm Bureau Board. So the membership the individuals will fill out a form and list the different members of that particular county's CEC. That form will then be submitted to the County Farm Bureau Board of Directors, and then the Board of Directors must approve the CEC. I do want to stop here and just note that the CEC is a powerful tool or gateway for individuals in your county who are Farm Bureau members, but may not be the usual suspects that are often engaged and involved in county Farm Bureau business. So be looking for neighbors or colleagues or individuals that are members that you know of, friends in your area who might not be regular Farm Bureau participants, but they are members. This may be a good tool to get someone who is maybe a little more politically minded, really has a desire and a heart to support and get behind candidates in your community, in your county and region that are pro-agriculture, that support agriculture. And this might be a good tool to draw them in and get some new faces, some fresh blood into this process. So once the CEC members have been assigned and approved by the board, the county president will then notify the Washington Farm Bureau staff of the formation and the membership of that particular county's CEC. Then finally, each CEC member, according to the PAC bylaws, each CEC member must contribute to the PAC financially. And the reason for this is somewhat twofold. One, it gives the individual members some skin in the game and says they've bought in and they are a part, kind of the pay to play mentality. Hey, you're taking this seriously and that you're going to take this responsibility seriously. That's the thought behind it, and it is something that the bylaws require. So each CEC member must contribute to the PAC financially. There is no minimum amount that an individual is asked or required to give, but it does have to be something. Then moving on, looking at, okay, once the CEC has been formed, what now? So each CEC chair and all members are nominated, like said, by the County Farm Bureau president and approved by the county board. All right, mention that. Now, the responsibilities of the chair of the CEC, and that chair is determined by the members of the CEC. So at their first meeting, the CEC will determine who the chair is, and the chair is responsible for convening and running CEC meetings. The chair is responsible for ensuring the CEC meets all the PAC deadlines, and there will be a detailed timeline. We're going to show some highlights of that timeline in a moment, but each CEC will receive, and each of the members should receive, a detailed timeline with information throughout the year, some important dates to hit, deadlines to keep in mind and look forward to, things like that. But the chair is responsible to ensure that the CEC meets all those deadlines as far as the county is concerned. And then finally, reporting recommendations to the county president for submission to the trustees. So ultimately, the chair is responsible for taking the CEC recommendations, submitting that to the county Farm Bureau board, in particular the president. The board will then be able to review those recommendations and then submit those on to the PAC trustees. So here, like I mentioned, is the timeline. So this is a little bit more of just pulling out some highlights to keep in mind. But as we look forward to 2024 and the timeline and deadlines that we're looking at through this upcoming year, first, March 22nd is the deadline to announce CEC membership to WFB. And so March 22nd is the deadline for a county to decide and confirm we want to have a CEC in our county this year and to submit that membership list to the WFB staff. That will be followed by May 10th, the deadline for candidates to file for candidacy. So by May 10th, all candidates throughout the state that are going to be on the ballot this upcoming year, that is the deadline. And by May 10th or shortly after May 10th, we will be able to know who exactly is running for which particular races and which particular counties or statewide, and be able to see that and determine which candidates each particular county is responsible for making recommendations on. Then that will be followed by June 14th, the deadline for county farm bureaus to submit primary election endorsement recommendations. So if the county wants to make recommendations in the primary election, that's the deadline there. Then June 21st, PAC trustees will meet to consider those primary election endorsements and then be able to announce those endorsements after that. And then August 30th is the deadline for county farm bureaus to submit general election endorsement recommendations. And that will be a deadline for individuals to submit those throughout all the different races throughout the state, statewide, countywide, even municipal and beyond. August 30th will be the big day. And then September 5th, the PAC trustees will meet to consider those general election recommendations and make their endorsements. So again, just a couple more guidelines. Once the CEC committee has been formed and approved, it's encouraged, familiarize yourself with the PAC timeline. Like I said, each CEC committee and each member should receive a timeline and more detail than what we just went over. But be sure to familiarize yourself with the upcoming deadlines, the tasks and responsibilities that are going to be happening and coming up throughout the year. And then, like I mentioned, at the first CEC meeting, decide which candidate races are up for election during that upcoming year. Which races does your county want to make recommendations on? You don't necessarily have to look at all of the races. They're available to look at, but you can determine in that first meeting which races are you going to really hone in on and look forward to. So speaking of that, CECs again can make recommendations on all public races. I mean, you can go from president, Congress, statewide offices, state legislature, county commissioners, school boards, conservation districts, etc. But the important thing to remember is the focus of a CEC is to recommend candidates who are pro-agriculture and are going to be working to make a positive influence and difference on the agriculture industry within that area or region or county. So look for candidates that, one, support agriculture, but two, they will have a hand in supporting this industry in the area. So not necessarily all races are going to have a direct tie-in to agriculture. So focus in on those races that will certainly have a hand and be shaping the priorities of the state or that region or that county as it touches the agriculture industry. And then the CEC must decide how to make decisions and what tools they're going to use. Again, this comes down to things like interviews or questionnaires that are sent to the candidates. CECs can look at things like past voting records, or are there other entities or organizations or individuals who are endorsing or contributing or supporting this particular candidate. So really there are a vast array of tools and resources available. Again, reach out to the state office if you would like additional support or help in crafting some of these things, especially when it comes to things like developing questionnaires, or if you want to set up a forum or facilitate some sort of debate to help individuals make those determinations on how to recommend endorsement. So speaking of questions, if an individual county's CEC would like to develop a questionnaire or develop some sort of forum, here are some questions that you might be considering as you look at developing that questionnaire. These are specifically for an incumbent, but if you're looking at an incumbent, you might send some questions such as, why are you seeking re-election? What other organizations have you been endorsed by? What do you consider the biggest issue facing agriculture, and what do you see as the best solution? How would you support ways to spur agricultural processing growth? Would you be willing to sponsor legislation? If it's a legislative candidate, would you be willing to sponsor legislation at the request of Washington Farm Bureau? And then for a new candidate who they may not be an incumbent in this particular race, what previous public office experience do you have? What organizations are involved in your campaign? What groups have already endorsed your candidacy? Do you have any experience in agriculture? Why are you seeking an election, and what are your priorities for our county or our state or our nation, depending on what race they're running in? And finally, are you familiar with Farm Bureau and our structure and how we operate and what our role is? So these are some sample questions. Again, the sky's the limit on what you can ask, and so be sure to develop your own. And again, the state office would be happy to assist in supporting you in that effort. We want to really encourage it. Now, once you've evaluated the candidates and once you've looked them over and once you've used the various tools and resources at your disposal, once you come to the point where it's like time to make a recommendation, you have three options, and you will be sent a form, and we will show you a sample form in just a moment, but you will have a form to fill out with three options. So when making a recommendation for a particular race, a CEC has three options. One, you can choose to endorse candidate X. You can choose to recommend, again, you're making the recommendation here to the PAC that they endorse a particular candidate. They can also, a CEC can also recommend or decide to take no action. And that CEC is in essence choosing this option to take no action. They will simply defer to other affected CECs. So if a particular race, be it a legislative race or a congressional race or a statewide race, that is impacting numerous counties, a county may decide we're not going to take any action in this particular race, and we will simply defer a recommendation to another county that may choose to make a recommendation in this particular race, but we're not going to put a voice in on this particular race. And then the third recommendation would be do not endorse any candidate. So if a particular CEC determines that there really is no good or qualified or worthy candidate in a particular race, they can make the determination, we recommend that the PAC not endorse any of the candidates in this particular race. So now it is important that you check one of the recommendation boxes. So you'll have those three options, and a failure to check one of those could be viewed by the PAC trustees as you're deferring to the other counties. You're choosing to remove your voice in this particular race. All right, like I said, here is a sample CEC endorsement recommendation form. It may be a little small to see to a degree, but this is just an example. This one is for local offices, but the basic form is similar. This is a general election endorsement recommendation form. The first thing, once you have made your decision on a recommendation, you list out the name or identify the position. So what position is this particular recommendation form for? And this is important to note, one form for one candidate. So don't use one form and list out several races. You have one form, one page for each candidate. So if you're going to make numerous recommendations, use numerous recommendation forms. So one form per candidate. So list out what race you're specifically referring to or making a recommendation here. And then this middle portion, put your county Farm Bureau, what county is this regarding? So you'd put your particular county name there. What is the county Farm Bureau that's making this recommendation? And you would write out the county that you're from. And then this middle portion here is the three options that we went over. So that's the county CEC. You are making one of these three recommendations to the PAC trustees. One, you might recommend that they endorse blank. And here you would put in the candidate's name. And so you are recommending that the PAC endorse candidate blank for the position that you had identified at the top of the form. Or you can choose to take no action and defer to another affected CEC. Or that third option, you're recommending that the PAC not endorse any candidates for this particular race. Okay. And then from there, once the recommendation form has been completed, the CEC chair will sign the form and date it. And then that form will be submitted to your county Farm Bureau board, and the county president or the county secretary, once it has been approved by the county Farm Bureau board, they will sign the form and date it as well. From there, they will send that, all, be it one or multiple, they will send those completed forms to the Washington Farm Bureau office, and the staff will compile them for the PAC, and the PAC will be able to make those determinations and their decisions based on the recommendations of the CECs. Now, once the recommendations have been completed and compiled and brought together, once that deadline has been met and all of the CEC recommendations have been submitted, what then? Well, forward completed recommendations to your county Farm Bureau for board for approval. So again, once the recommendations have been completed, they will be submitted to the board. The board president must sign off on the recommendation form and forward it to the trustees of the PAC. And then also, if your CEC would like to make recommendations for PAC expenditures, if you would like to make financial recommendations, you may also forward those at that time as well to the PAC. Now, here are just some questions, frequently asked questions that may be helpful as you're looking at the CEC and what is that relationship between the CEC and their function with the PAC and their function and their responsibilities. So this question here, do county farm bureaus endorse candidates? Again, we've hit this numerous times. I may sound like a broken record, but it is a question that frequently comes up. No, county farm bureaus make recommendations for endorsement. They do not endorse candidates. The WSFB PAC trustees are that sole body that makes the endorsements. How about this? Should county farm bureaus inform candidates that they have been endorsed? No. If a candidate receives an endorsement by the PAC, the WFB PAC will notify the candidates of such. So once candidates receive that endorsement by the PAC, it's the PAC or the Washington Farm Bureau staff under the direction of the PAC will then notify those candidates. We will be providing them, one, with the news that they have been endorsed, as well as provide them with a little bit of a resource. So they can utilize something like our logo or whatnot for some of their materials if they want to advertise or share and announce their endorsement. If a candidate is endorsed in the primary, will the candidate need an additional recommendation for the general election? Good question. So if a candidate is endorsed in the primary, and do they need to be endorsed again? No. All candidates that are endorsed in the primary and who get through the primary and remain and advance to the general election, they will still be endorsed. No further action is required. So if the PAC endorses a particular candidate and that candidate advances, the CEC does not have to review them again and make recommendations again on that particular candidate for the general election. If they advance to the general, they're still endorsed by the Washington Farm Bureau. Next question, if a CEC deems no candidate in a particular race worthy of recommendation for endorsement, what action should be taken? Well, this would be where the county can choose to, one, either defer to another county that might be affected. They can choose to defer to that county to make that choice. But if a county determines that no candidate is worthy of recommendation, they can also choose to recommend that the PAC not endorse any candidate for that election, be it primary or general. Just be sure to check the correct box on that form if there is no box checked or nothing has been identified, the trustees may treat that lack of action as simply a deferral and not identify it as, oh, this county is wanting us not to make an endorsement decision on this race. So just make sure to clarify that on the appropriate form. Next question is, what is required for a candidate to receive a Washington State Farm Bureau PAC endorsement? So for state legislative races, okay, where there are multiple counties involved, some of those legislative races incorporate various counties. For state legislative races, there needs to be 100% agreement between counties that are affected by this particular race. So if 2 or 3 or 4 counties are within one state legislative district, those affected counties must have a unanimous agreement for the endorsement. For statewide races and U.S. congressional races, 2/3 of the counties must agree on a candidate before an endorsement is given. And then in local races, such as a county commissioner or sheriff, where really only one county is affected or impacted, an endorsement from the WSFB PAC is usually given on the Associated County CEC's recommendation. Again, it's ultimately the PAC who has the responsibility to make those endorsements, but the PAC trustees take the recommendations of the counties very seriously, in particular on these local races where one county is impacted and affected. They really generally rely on the understanding and the expertise and the recommendations of the county to make those recommendations. And so generally that is what they will choose and go with. Can county farm bureaus financially support a candidate running for office? No, a county farm bureau, the county farm bureau funds cannot be used to support political candidates. Due to the structure of our county farm bureaus, it is inappropriate for county farm bureaus to use their funds to support political candidates. Similarly, can a county farm bureau make a donation to the WSFB PAC? Again, no. Due to the structure of the county farm bureaus, their money cannot be used to go toward political entities, things like PACs or candidates. And furthermore, the county cannot pay for the required PAC donations of the CEC members. So remember how each CEC member is required by the PAC bylaws to donate or give some sort of financial contribution to the PAC. A county farm bureau cannot say, we're going to, as a county farm bureau, we're going to pay to take care of that requirement. We're going to pay for the donations of each of our CEC members. They cannot do that. County farm bureau funds cannot be used to go toward a PAC or a political candidate. Now, can a CEC recommendation be rejected? Yes, it can. The trustees of the PAC have the authority to reject recommendations for any office with cause. So ultimately, again, it is the PAC trustees who are responsible for making the determination and endorsing candidates. The CEC makes recommendations. The PAC trustees hold those recommendations very seriously. Those recommendations carry a great deal of weight, but ultimately it's the trustees who have the authority and the responsibility to choose to endorse, or they can reject the recommendations for any office with cause. Now, what if a county chooses not to form a CEC? Well, basically, if a county chooses not to form a CEC, they won't have any input in selecting candidates in their own or any multi-county districts. They are, in effect, deferring on all of the races. So this is where we want to encourage every member, every single county farm bureau to form a CEC. If you do not form a CEC, you are giving up your voice, you're giving up your power and authority to influence the races and the political races throughout our state, in particular, those local races that your county specifically has the ability to make those recommendations. So we can't encourage enough for counties to form those CECs. Again, if you do not, you will have no voice and no input in selecting candidates in your area. Well, can a county farm bureau actively campaign for endorsed candidates? The answer here is, again, no. County farm bureaus cannot actively campaign for an endorsed candidate due to their structure. They cannot be seen as actively political, be it supporting financially or actively campaigning for particular candidates. They can, however, mail to their membership list a list of the endorsed WFB PAC candidates. So those candidates, that candidate list can be sent to your membership, but that really is the extent of what a county farm bureau is capable of doing campaign-wise. Now, with that, that kind of brings us to the end. But if you have any other questions that maybe we didn't cover in that previous 10 or so, or if there are questions that you may have over some of the information that we're given, contact the WFB office. All right. In particular, contact our governmental affairs team. We would be happy to provide any information, answer any questions, walk through with you any of the information that was given, or hopefully try to explain it better. You can email us at gr@wsfb.com or give us a call at 360-357-9975. We hope this information has been helpful to you. We hope that you see the county CECs as a powerful tool that you in your particular county will take advantage of. And with that, we hope to see you as a part of this cycle, and we hope that you'll engage in the upcoming election cycle, and we hope that we will be able to work together for a stronger agricultural future.